You know, we hear all these geopolitical theories, right, trying to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
But today we're diving into one that's, well, it's pretty fascinating.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It links what's happening now with a historical pattern going back over 1,400 years.
Wow, that's a long view.
We're talking the Baroque circle theory by Professor El-Awaisi. He's looking at the whole power dynamic around Islamic Jerusalem.
Interesting. So Professor El-Awaisi, he's not just looking at history in a vacuum, is he?
No, not at all.
He's connecting it to what's happening right now.
Exactly. Like, he connects the liberation of Damascus
Right.
to the potential future liberation of Islamic Jerusalem.
Okay, now that's a bold statement.
It is. He's saying that understanding how certain countries in the region interact is key to understanding what might happen next.
It's all connected.
Exactly. And Professor El-Awaisi starts by highlighting the fall of the Assad regime in Syria.
Right.
He sees this as a huge turning point.
Yeah, that was a major shift in the region.
Absolutely. He argues that it signifies the end of Iranian influence in Syria.
And he doesn't just say that, he backs it up.
Oh, yeah? With what?
From high-ranking Iranian officials, like Mehdi Taib, you know, he was close to Iran's supreme leader.
Right.
And Taib basically admits that Iran really depended on Syria for their own security.
Interesting. So it's like a peek behind the curtain of their strategic thinking.
Exactly. So if Syria is no longer under Iran's influence...
Right. Where does that leave us?
Well, that's where this Baroque circle theory comes in.
Okay, all ears.
Professor El-Awaisi, he identifies 4 countries as absolutely essential.
Okay.
Egypt, Syria, and he includes the whole Bilad al-Sham region there, along with Iraq and Turkey. He says these 4 nations are key for any potential resurgence of the Islamic world.
I see.
And significantly for the liberation of Islamic Jerusalem.
So hold on. He's connecting the liberation of Islamic Jerusalem directly to these 4 nations freeing themselves from foreign influence and corrupt governance.
That's right. It's like he's saying internal strength is a must for external success.
Right, like you have to get your own house in order first.
Exactly. And this connection between internal reform and external goals, it's a core idea in Professor El-Awaisi's work.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About other conflicts, I mean, worldwide.
It really does.
Is internal stability always needed for achieving political goals on a global stage?
That's the question, isn't it?
Big questions.
Questions.
And Professor El-Awaisi uses historical parallels to support his argument. He talks about the Islamic conquest of Islamic Jerusalem under Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
He points out that it followed the conquest of Damascus. So he's saying the recent liberation of Damascus could be a sign of things to come, almost like history is repeating itself.
Like it's a pattern.
A pattern, exactly.
For those who might not know, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, he was a pivotal figure early on in Islamic history.
Oh, absolutely.
Known for his leadership during the expansion of the Islamic Empire, his conquest of Damascus, major turning point. It paved the way for the later conquest of Islamic Jerusalem. It's a thought-provoking comparison.
It is. And it brings up another example. Saladin's successful recapture of Islamic Jerusalem in 1187.
Saladin, yeah, legendary figure.
Saladin followed a similar path before taking on the Crusaders. He consolidated his power in Egypt and Syria.
Interesting.
Again, emphasizing that regional unity and stability are crucial.
So there's this theme emerging. Internal strength first, then external action.
Exactly. And to dive deeper into this idea of control, Professor El-Awaisi introduces this concept of...
circles of control.
Yes, circles of control within his Baroque circle theory.
Okay, lay it on me. What are these circles of control?
They explain the actions a power seeking to control Islamic Jerusalem might take.
I see. A way to break down their strategies.
Exactly. He outlines 3 approaches.
Okay, I'm listening.
Occupation, domination, and destruction.
Occupation's pretty straightforward, I guess. Directly controlling both Egypt and Bilad al-Sham.
Right. But domination, that's a little more nuanced.
Yeah, how so?
Think of a powerful country influencing another through economic policies or military aid.
Ah, so not direct control, but still pulling the strings.
Exactly. They may not occupy the territory, but they still have a big influence on the region's decisions.
I see. Domination. Indirect, but still control.
Right. And then there's destruction. This is more aggressive.
How so?
It's about undermining and destabilizing both Egypt and Bilad al-Sham.
So keeping the region weak and divided.
Exactly. prevent any challenge to the dominant power.
Classic divide and conquer.
Professor El-Awaisi highlights this destruction tactic to show how control can be maintained through chaos.
It's a disturbing thought, but it makes sense strategically.
It does, and all of this leads up to Professor El-Awaisi's call to action.
He's not just presenting a theory, then. He's suggesting a way forward.
Right. He argues that liberating Islamic Jerusalem requires a multifaceted approach.
Okay, I'm following.
It starts with understanding the historical and geopolitical realities. What we've been talking about.
Grasping the deeper patterns.
Yes. Then comes the hard part. Active efforts to free Egypt and Bilad al-Sham from foreign influence, oppression, corruption, all of it.
So it's about more than just changing leaders.
It's a fundamental societal shift he's talking about.
A big ask.
It is. And finally, he emphasizes the need for genuine unity between Egypt and Bilad al-Sham.
Wow! Unity in a region often marked by division.
He even suggests strategic cooperation with Qabis.
Qabis?
Modern-day Tunisia.
Oh, right. To form a united front. It's a powerful idea, but...
But is it achievable?
That's the question, isn't it?
We'll delve into that more as we continue our deep dive.
I'm ready when you are. So Professor El-Awaisi says regional stability, that's crucial for any successful liberation movement.
Makes sense.
But here's the thing.
What?
What happens when powerful external forces, they've got a vested interest in keeping things as they are?
That's a good point. You need stability to build anything, but powerful nations often benefit from chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Division makes it easier for them to exert control.
Right. Like imagine it's a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Strategic game. And the Middle East, that's the chessboard.
That's a great analogy. And that's what makes Professor El-Awaisi's theory so interesting.
Yeah.
He's not just looking at events in isolation. He's pushing us to think, to really think critically about the forces shaping things.
The present and the future. It's like he's encouraging us to look beyond the headlines,
Absolutely. Look at the deeper currents, like those of history, power, ideology.
The things driving events in the region.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how often we get a real nuanced perspective on what's happening.
Right. Like, what are the root causes of conflict? The long-term effects of foreign intervention, we rarely hear about those.
It's all about the latest crisis, the most shocking headline. We miss the historical context.
Which is what Professor El-Awaisi emphasizes. He wants us to go deeper. See beyond the immediate events. Understand the power dynamics underneath.
It's like he's saying the instability in the Middle East, it's not just an accident.
Right.
It's a deliberate strategy by those who benefit from the status quo.
Makes you think.
It does. And what about the media?
Oh, good point.
Are they giving us the full story? Or are they feeding us a narrative?
A narrative that serves the interests of the powerful. That's a good question.
It is. And Professor El-Awaisi makes you think about that. Makes you a critical consumer of information.
Exactly. Question what you hear.
That's why I love these deep dives.
Me too.
It's like peeling back the layers, uncovering the hidden stuff driving events.
Connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture.
That's where the real value of Professor El-Awaisi's work is, I think.
I agree. It's not just information. He's encouraging us to question our assumptions, to think for ourselves.
Yeah, like, don't just accept what you're told. Dig deeper. Look for the connections, the patterns.
Your historical precedent to help you make sense of things.
It's tough, though, isn't it? In today's world, I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
Information overload, conflicting narratives, bias everywhere.
It's easy to get lost.
It is. But Professor El-Awaisi, he gives us a framework to cut through the noise.
Reach a deeper understanding.
It's like he's giving us a map to navigate this crazy landscape.
It's a good way to put it, and that empowers us, doesn't it?
It does.
To engage with the world in a more meaningful way.
Not just be passive, be active.
Take ownership of your understanding. Don't just be fed information.
One thing that really struck me was this.
Yeah.
Professor El-Awaisi says the future of Islamic Jerusalem, it's directly tied to what's going on internally in these key countries.
He puts a lot of emphasis on those internal factors.
He does. It's powerful. He's saying lasting change has to come from within.
Not from outside saviors or interventions.
It's about the people taking control.
Building a future on their own terms. On justice, stability, independence.
It's a message of hope. A reminder that even when things seem impossible, change is possible if people are willing to work for it.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It is.
Professor El-Awaisi's work, it's a call to action, a challenge for us all to play our part.
In creating a better world, he doesn't offer easy answers, but he presents us with the reality
a complex one.
And he urges us to grapple with it, engage with it, find our own ways to contribute to positive change. Absolutely. But I'm still thinking about what he said about Egypt and Syria needing real unity to liberate Islamic Jerusalem. He even specifically mentioned cooperation with Qabis, which is modern-day Tunisia.
Right.
But can that level of unity even happen
It's a valid question.
in a region so divided?
By conflict, sectarianism, foreign interference.
Exactly. How do you overcome decades, centuries even, of mistrust?
It's a huge challenge. Professor El-Awaisi acknowledges that. But he points to history.
Like what?
Successful pan-Islamic movements that overcame those divisions. He suggests they offer a blueprint.
A blueprint?
Showing that unity isn't just a dream, it's necessary for real change.
Like Saladin uniting Egypt and Syria before taking on the Crusaders.
Exactly. Professor El-Awaisi seems to believe the desire for liberation, for a just future, that can be a powerful force, stronger than old divisions.
It's hopeful.
Yeah.
It suggests that the potential for change is always there.
Even in the toughest situations. His work encourages us to look past those current divisions, to imagine a shared future.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? What are the key takeaways here? What can they learn from Professor El-Awaisi's work?
Well, I think he's challenging us to think differently about the Middle East, to go beyond the simple narratives,
Right.
to engage with the complexity, to consider the historical roots of what's happening, the role of external powers, and the importance of internal reform, regional unity, all of it.
As prerequisites for real change.
Exactly. He's asking us to be more informed, more critical
Or engaged.
in the world, to recognize the power dynamics at play.
And that we're not just watching.
We have a role in shaping things.
Yeah. We're active participants, not passive observers.
Right. And Professor El-Awaisi's work reminds us that the future of Islamic Jerusalem, and the whole region, really, it depends on us, on individuals, communities.
People committed to making things better.
It's about agency, realizing we're not pawns in some game.
But active participants, capable of driving change.
That's the key.
It's like he's saying the path to liberation starts with self-liberation.
Interesting.
You can't truly free a land until you free the minds of its people. Makes you think.
It does. It speaks to the power of education, raising awareness, mobilizing people at the grassroots level.
It's not just about fighting external enemies.
Right. It's about dismantling the internal structures of oppression, the things that keep people divided.
That takes a change in thinking, doesn't it?
It does. A willingness to question the status quo, to imagine something different.
Professor El-Awaisi isn't just giving us a geopolitical theory.
It's more than that.
It's a roadmap for transformation, social and political.
A call for a more authentic future, a self-determined future.
Where people have the power to shape their own destinies.
And build societies based on justice, dignity, shared prosperity.
It's a message that goes beyond borders, cultures. It's a universal human aspiration, this desire for freedom.
Self-determination, a world where everyone has the opportunity to live a meaningful life.
So it's not just about changing leaders or redrawing lines on a map.
No, it's much deeper than that.
Professor El-Awaisi is suggesting we need to change mindsets, create a society where people feel empowered, in control of their own future.
Exactly. It's about that sense of ownership, of agency.
So it goes beyond political independence then.
It does. It's about intellectual liberation, too. Cultural, spiritual even.
Professor El-Awaisi is talking about true liberation then, a complete transformation.
One that tackles both the external and internal challenges.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job unpacking his Barak circle theory today.
Yeah, it's complex, that's for sure. Lots of layers. But we've highlighted some key concepts, I think.
We talked about the historical parallels, those circles of control, and the need for internal reform, regional unity.
It's a lot to absorb, but it gives us a framework. Helps us understand what's going on in the Middle East.
As always, we encourage you to do your own digging.
Definitely.
Don't just take our word for it. Read Professor El-Awaisi's book, explore these ideas, and let's keep this conversation going.
Exactly. Be active, not passive.
It's about understanding, not just consuming information.
Because that's how we create change, by being informed, engaged, and empowered.
We all have a part to play in shaping the future. And that wraps up our deep dive into Professor El-Awaisi's work. We hope you found it as stimulating as we did.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds working.
We'll catch you on our next deep dive.